Hey Rebels, what does it take to listen to someone? And I mean, really listen. Phones down, tablets down, eye contact, 100% engagement in the conversation and the moment. Some people talk for a living, and when you turn on the news, you're rarely witnessing the act of listening. Everyone is waiting for their turn to speak when they aren't talking. And it's not usually about honoring the words of the other panelists. It's often adversarial and angled towards conflict and dispute. This is so we can grab the viewer and grab them by the shirt and just shake them and hold their attention for as long as possible till that next commercial break. Some podcasts follow that adversarial format, but today's guest is producing a podcast show that is the antithesis of conflict and outrage. Shawn Broom's podcast is known as The Story of You. He sits down with his guests, he talks with them, it flows nice, it's gentle, but you can tell he's listening, and deeply. He's engaging with his guests. I wanted to sit down with Shawn, share beer, and find out what makes him tick, and find out why his show might be one of the most compelling podcasts on the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Sick shout out to the Podcast Network. Excellent intro. I appreciate it. That's very high praise, so thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to be clear with people. I've actually met you years ago.
Yeah.
In a previous life.
Yeah, very different life too. So yeah, we knew each other, God, probably like 2006, 2007, I think, something like that, when I was doing stand-up in the city here. I assume that's what we're going to talk about for that part. So.
Oh, just that little piece. I remember seeing you up on stage telling jokes.
Yeah.
So now to hear your podcast is totally different from any of that comedy stuff.
For sure, yeah.
I kind of wanted to start off with, how the hell did you get into the Story of You podcast?
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously, yeah. So I've been listening to podcasts for years and years and years, right? I was always into like comedy shows, like Comedy Bang Bang or Never Not Funny or all kinds of stuff. I love stuff on the Earwolf Network, all that kind of stuff. And I just one day I realized in my job that I have, I'm a massage therapist, and so all day long I talk to people, I get to know people, and I learn about who people are. And I came to realize that, like, I think that was like the most interesting aspect of my job. Like, yeah, helping people is great and all that, whatever. But the main thing I loved was getting to know people and talking to people. And I thought, God, I guess that's like what I'm into, is just normal, ordinary people and their stories. I find them fascinating. And so I started looking for a podcast to scratch that itch. And there's plenty of podcasts out there about celebrities and just like well-known people and their journeys and their stories. But like, it's hard to relate to those, you know, like not all of us are millionaires and all that kind of stuff, and there wasn't really anything I found that was long form conversations about people's entire lives, you know, plenty of like, hey, share a story from your life or stuff like that. And not to discredit those shows, but they weren't scratching the itch that I had. And so I just thought, I'll just make my own show then, right? If no one else is doing it, then I'll do it. And so the Story of You was born out of that. And we've been going for just about to celebrate our 3-year anniversary, and episode 146 should be out soon. So yeah, we've been going strong ever since.
Is it a one-man show? Do you have multiple people working on it?
Right. It's just me. I do pretty much everything on it right now. My fiance was taking the photos for a little while, but then I just took over that role as well. So now, yeah, it's just a one-man show. I kind of do all. But, you know, there have been plenty of people that helped me get there, you know, like people like Graham Zirk, who did the artwork for the show, Wolf Willow, who did the theme song for the show, and you know, we have our sponsors that we love. So yeah, so it's not just me, but I do all the work. So
Lots of friends to help push you along.
Exactly, yes. That's the nice thing about friends.
Is this a career thing? Is this more of a passion, talking to people?
Oh, God, there's no money in it. But, I mean, we have sponsors, and I certainly appreciate them. But all that money goes into advertising and trying to grow the show, right? So, and then it works great for that. If I could make my living doing this show, it's all I would want to do. Like it is my passion. It is the thing I love. And, you know, even if nobody listened to it, I'd still probably do it because I like doing it. And it's a real pleasure for me to just get to know people and like meet new people every episode and get to know them. Sometimes I'm meeting them for the first time and I know it's a blank slate. I know nothing going in, and those are super fun. But, yeah, it scratches the itch that I had for sure. So,
who are some of the people that have come on the show that maybe locals would recognize?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like the biggest one. Well, should I start with that one? I mean, we had former Mayor Pat Fiacco on the show a little while ago, and he was, it was a really interesting episode talking to him. I'm trying to reach out to more, like, I'd like to get more politicians. Like, there's people that I want to talk to. There's, athletes in the city I'd love to talk to and all that kind of stuff. But Pat was a big one. We had Jack Semple on for our 100th episode, which was really cool talking to him. And he's someone who I grew up listening to, and had the pleasure of sitting down and talking to him. And probably the biggest one, though, the biggest feather in my cap this year, we had Fred Penner on an episode, and I did an episode with Sharon and Bram from Sharon, Lois, and Bram. And so those were two, like, pretty big, like, white. I have a list that I call my white whales, and these are the people that I'm, like, trying to get, and I crossed 2 names off the list this year, so that was a pretty big one for me.
Who was your favorite person to interview so far? You've interviewed quite a few.
Yeah, we've done, 100 and, I mean, in the bank, we have probably about 151 episodes right now, so, my favorite, God, that's really actually hard. Like, they're all so interesting. There was a woman named Jan that I talked to that I really, like, I didn't really know much about her, and, like, she was a nurse, like, overseas. She worked in a women's prison in Nepal for a while as a nurse, and she did some work in Africa, like, nursing, but then, like, as the show went on, it was around the time of the 10 or 12 year anniversary of that Art of McLean's article about the worst neighborhood in Canada. And so that had been on my mind a lot. And so as we were talking, I made just like an off the cuff remark about that article. And she was like, oh yeah, I was like the person who like did that article. I was like the nurse that showed them around North Central and showed them everything that was going on down there. And I was like, oh no shit. And so like we dove into that, and it was just like her episode was just nothing but really positive surprises all the way along. And so that's like a pretty, that's one that I look back on pretty fondly. And that was way back in like the 50s or 60s, like it was a while ago. So
when you were talking to her, you hadn't done a bunch of pre-research, you just discovered it through the discussion.
Yeah, for sure. We do a lot more work now to prepare for episodes, but in the earlier days, I always use the word we, the royal we, whatever, but in the early days it was I liked the surprise of it. I liked, like not knowing anything and going in. Plus, for the ordinary average person, there's not really much research you can do. You can't just Google someone's name and then like get a bunch of, I guess you can to a certain extent, but I always like to just kind of go in blind. Now that has changed a lot. There's like, there's questions that I ask beforehand. They give me a whole breakdown of their life, and that just helps like guide the conversation. I think it leads to a better episode ultimately. So yeah, now I that wouldn't be much of a surprise, but yeah, but back then certainly.
Back when I was studying that kind of the art of interviewing,
yeah,
we would often pre-interview,
of course,
do the full thing, and then when we would hand the person off to the anchor or the person who would actually be interviewing them live,
mm-hmm,
we would have notes and be like, here's a prompt,
yeah,
a prompt. Because you only have maybe a minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes max. You
yeah,
don't have that long 60-minute format.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt it was just lacking a little bit of that human touch.
For sure.
Like you didn't have that active discovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you discovering that same kind of thing? Or are you feeling that?
It's to a certain extent, like it's
maybe it's a dumb question.
No, not at all. No, I get what you're saying. I don't know if it applies to me. I don't think that like there's still stuff that comes even with the research. People will send me 2 pages of their jot form notes of their life and all the big moments, but then we'll still discover stuff in the show. There's still things that come out that they go, oh yeah, right, I forgot about this. Or like, one of my favorite things about the show is when the guests surprise themselves. When like, on the show when someone will say like, oh, I never thought about this before, but talking about this early thing and then this later thing in my life, I can see the connection between them now. And it's, like we've had people have kind of big revelations on the show where they go like, oh shit, I didn't realize that like these things are connected. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, the surprises for them are often the best ones. So
if someone was going to jump into your show,
sure,
should they start from the very beginning or should they pick a particular episode?
Don't start at the beginning. Those episodes are dog shit. And I apologize to everyone who was on the early episodes because I didn't know what I was doing, and your episodes turned out pretty crappy. Then that's on me. That's not on you guys. So
where should people jump in?
Honestly, like what I would say is go to the website, www.storyofyou.podcast.com, and just go through them. We put a little description of all the people, like every episode, and just find one that speaks to you. Find one that you can relate to. Find one whose story, you could connect with. For me to say what would be the best point, that depends on who you are, right? So you might get more out of this one and less out of this one, but yeah, just check it out. I guarantee there's something on there that will appeal to you. We've interviewed enough people from enough walks of life that there's probably someone you can grab onto. So yeah.
What's a lesson that you've learned along the way while you've been producing the show? You've talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably the biggest lesson is that we're all exactly the same. It seems strange to say that when I'm trying to promote a show where every story is different, but if you really boil it down to its base parts, everyone's story is pretty much the same. It doesn't matter if you're from here or Kuwait or Oslo, wherever you're from. All of our stories hit the same beats, right? Everybody had a first crush, most everybody went to school and hated it, and or at least in the shows that we've done, and it's funny just hearing those same things come up over and over. It doesn't matter if you grew up on a farm in India or you grew up in a farm in Canada. It's the same thing, just a different kind of painting on it, essentially. So it's made me, not to make my show sound more important than it is or whatever, but it has legitimately made me a better person. I've gained way more empathy from the show. I've learned more about the human existence and just who we are and what makes us tick and what makes us happy and what makes us sad. It's made my appreciation of humanity that much richer and deeper, and yeah. And now I do it for purely selfish reasons, just to improve myself. So, and if you get something out of it, good for you. But this is for me. So.
One of the things that I said when we started this podcast was I didn't want it to be an advertisement.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be phony and all that nonsense where it comes in, hey, if you would like to order this pre-made meal delivery service to your house. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But one thing I said was I wanted to bring guests on the show and bribe them with a beer.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So today we're drinking Nokomis Haskap Sour.
Excellent.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Made you work for it. Oh, it smells good.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I have something very exciting to tell you about this beer. This is the first beer I've ever drank in my entire life.
What?
Yeah. I didn't want to tell you before the show. Surprise, right? That's part of the fun, is a surprise. I have literally never drank beer before this moment. This is the very first beer I've ever drank, and I'm very pleased to say that it's a Rebellion beer. So
no, it's a Nokomis beer.
Oh, well, shit, sorry. Sorry, it's in a growler. I didn't know, but okay. It's a Nokomis beer, and it's delicious. I enjoy it. So, but yeah, I've up until this point, I've never partook in beer. So
that's hilarious, man. Well, to tell you about this one, it's called a sour.
Okay.
Kettle sour. So what he does is he brews the beer just like normal, and then he leaves it in the kettle for a period of time to sour it. The bacteria will activate and be happy and do its bacteria thing, and it will create that tang that you're tasting.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice and light and effervescent. You're getting that bubbly champagne kind of characteristic to it.
It's a very pleasing crimson color. It's it's really nice.
I'm not sure if he colored it or if he used just the Haskaps. But Haskaps are a Saskatchewan berry, native to northern Saskatchewan. Harvested, again, I mentioned this previously to the other guest on the other episode, that they're a wild berry found up north. They were cultured and brought down to the US, and that he built them up, and now there's farms that are actually growing Haskaps for production in Saskatchewan. Wow.
And so are they mainly used in beer, or what's the main purpose of them?
They're called the superfood, and I remember reading this article where it was saying they are going to be the thing that replaces blueberries as the antioxidant superfood.
Sure, okay.
You can put them in pies and tarts and all that sorts of thing. They're great for baking. You can just eat them by the handful.
Yeah.
We've got Haskap bushes in the front of the brewery, and we did a Haskap beer with those Haskaps earlier this year.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's I get it. I'll have to seek them out because they're tasty. So how much of what we're tasting is the Haskap?
There is quite a prominent Haskap berry flavor in this.
This is everything in this mug is new to me. So I don't know. I can't parse out the taste of what's what right now.
If I was to hold up the idea of beer to you,
Right.
I would say sour is very much not how all the rest of beer in the world tastes.
Yeah,
Sour is very much its own unique, extreme, like fringe identity. And in Saskatchewan, I would say sours have only really started to take off in the last couple years.
Okay.
But prior to that, we couldn't sell sours to save our lives. We brewed them for ourselves to amuse ourselves,
Right.
because we love it and we're excited about it. But nobody was drinking it. Like, we took a bronze at the World Beer Cup for our sour Flanders.
Right.
And we were sitting on bottles for months and months.
Crazy.
And we had guys coming in, like flying in from around the world, across the country, and they're like, I gotta get some of that sour. And we're like, it's right over there.
We have so much of it.
They're
Take
like-
as much home as you
They're
can.
like, what do you mean? And we're like, nobody here drinks sours. So this year, we launched a pineapple sour and a mango sour,
Ooh,
two of our fastest selling beers of all time.
I could see that. Yeah.
The mango sold out in like 4 hours,
Oh my God.
and the pineapple took like a day and a half. And I think it was just the lag between emails, but
Right.
every store, every retailer is like, give me as much as you can. I don't care. My customers want it.
Nice.
We've just turned that corner, and it all kind of, so that's what the significance, the emotional and marketing significance of a sour is.
Nice.
I'm going to send you home with some lentil.
Okay.
That would be what I would call like the standard beer
Okay.
from Rebellion.
That sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate that. This is delicious, by the way. For a first beer, I'm more than happy with this one.
Oh,
so.
man. And Jeff from Nokomis, him and his team, like Aaron, all of them, they make great beer. Like kick-ass Saskatchewan beer. I highly
Nice.
recommend them. If you ever get the chance to try their brown or their Cascadian dark ale, might be a little bit more extreme for you
That's all right.
if you're getting your legs under you, but man, great examples of the style.
All right.
Just finely well done beers.
Nice. And you know that is there is something to be said. You know, it's funny. Like I said, I've never had beer before, but I am so tickled and so pleased with the craft brewing industry that's in Regina right now, and just how it's exploded over the last 5-10 years, probably even less than that, 5 years or a little bit more. You know, like I remember when Moose Knuckle came out, and everyone was like, "A Regina beer, that's crazy!" And now it's like everywhere you go, there's Regina beer. Like every restaurant has it on tap. Like it's just like a thing now, and it's it's great. It's really awesome to see that industry flourish here. So.
It's pretty cool. Pile of Bones just opened their tap room about
Right
a
on.
week ago on a soft launch.
Huge.
So you can hop in there. They're all Regina boys.
Yeah.
Just, I think it's over 32 taps. They've got tacos by Chef Mariana Brito of Malinche.
Malinche, hell yeah. Mariana, former guest of the Story of You, awesome woman, and just phenomenal chef, and just love Malinche. So yeah, for sure. That sounds great.
My only complaint about her tacos is I want more.
Yes.
But my wallet isn't that deep.
Yeah, that's very true. I had horchata for the first time from her, and I'm a very sheltered man. I've never had horchata before. I'd never had beer before, but drinking the horchata, I was like, this is like the greatest thing I've ever drank. And then I got to the bottom and realized, oh, it's just sugar and milk. Like, that's just sugar milk. That's the greatest. Of course it's amazing. Those are two great things. So, yeah. Love Mariana. She's awesome.
Get her to make you ceviche.
Okay.
It's delicious.
I bet.
It's basically it's raw veg, and it could either be seafood or meat or some combination of spices,
Yeah.
and then it's cooked with lime juice.
Ooh, that sounds great.
Super delicious and refreshing. You put it on your chips and you just scarf it down. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Oh,
Right up my alley. Yeah, yeah.
quesadillas.
For sure. Oh yeah, yeah. She catered. I've been to 2 weddings that she's catered, and what I love about her is that she's making kind of these traditional Mexican dishes with a distinctly Saskatchewan flair. You know, so all the ingredients are sourced from around here. She uses a lot of like local grains and just like plants and things like that in the dish that normally would be, Mexican grains and plants, and just creating like really fresh ideas of what Mexican food can be based on the location that you're in. So yeah, super talented.
One of the other cool things that's going on is Warehouse Brewing is about to open. It's
Okay.
about half a block this way.
Yeah.
And then there's rumors of an additional brewery opening.
Oh yeah.
So you could hit about 5 or 6 different breweries in less than a 5-minute drive.
Nice.
So you could just go bing, bang, boom, hit them all, and get a real sense of the scene. And kind of just, it's neat to see that that's happening. We're no longer like a macro beer town. We're, in our own rights, we're coming into the craft beer scene.
Well, now that like the Molson, brewing or Molson bottling plant is gone and all that, and and really it wasn't even that far from here. It was just a stone's throw from this place. So this whole area has kind of had beer infused in it forever, I would imagine. So.
There's a lot of beer history
Yeah.
in this neighborhood. The brewers were literally, I think, half a block that way.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
People can't see it on the podcast, but I'm pointing my hand in direction.
Yes, cross broad and you'll find it. So yeah.
Yeah, we did some research. We found some old recipes from that time, and we actually brewed one of those beers
nice.
with that old style recipe back, like over 100 years old. This recipe.
How was it?
It was okay.
Yeah, like beers, everything's advanced since then, I would imagine.
It's pretty laid back.
Yeah.
Well, our farmers, they've just gotten more efficient.
Yeah.
So the barley is more consistent, and the hops are more. You're getting more out of the hops, right? So you need less of some things and more of other things, because you're not brewing with that same grain anymore. If you imagine that farmers have basically spent the last 100 years making food even more nutritious and grow better and resistant to like drought, it's changed how it behaves when we brew with it.
Right.
So if you don't modify those recipes, you're going to get something that's maybe different from what the original brewer intended.
So how did you get into this whole thing? How did you get into like brewing and all that? Because when I knew you, you were a journalist. You were studying journalism, I believe. So it's a pretty far. I mean, you're scratching that itch now, but like, yeah, how did you get into rebellion and brewing and all that? Taking over your show. How's it going, Matt?
What I was doing at the time in university was training Aikido. And the dojo was at the time located where Sachin Guitars is. And then we would cross the street and go over to Bushwhacker and have a pint after class.
Yeah.
Just a nice Last Mountain Lager and refresh ourselves with some nacho chips, right? And that's kind of how I got started with craft beer. And I kind of said, there's more to taste. There's more flavor. Like my parents would be like, "Oh, we brought some Coors over," and I'm like, bring me over some Bushwhacker,
sure,
or anything different." And then when I was working in government, I'd peek my head over the cubicle, and I was talking with Mark Heisey, who's one of the founders, and he was working in IT at the time, and I was just like, I figured out somehow that he knew a lot about beer. So I'd be like, I'm going to get this for supper tonight. What beer should I get? And I was texting him and annoying him, and he was very patient and kind with me and just said, try this, try that. Oh, stay away from this. Right. And then one day he just came to me and said, I'm opening a brewery. He's like, I've seen your work. I see what you do. He's like, you get it. You're into craft beer. He's like, you know how to do this communications thing. And I was just like, wow. Hell yeah. Like we shook hands at Atlantis Coffee Shop. And
nice, rest in peace, Atlantis, yeah.
That's kind of, that's where he said, hey, come with me.
Nice.
And so, at my kitchen table, we came up with some of the colors and names and branding pieces, and away we go 5 years later.
Right on. Well, I mean, it seems like the business has only been growing since then. So, I wish you guys all the success in the world.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I got to get you in the tap room. I'll give you a little brewery tour.
Sure,
after.
that'd be awesome. Yeah, let me see how the sausage is made. That sounds great.
So we're both in this whole podcast kind of business.
Yeah.
If you could interview anyone, dead or alive,
who
would it be and why?
Okay. Actually, that's an easy answer for me. Actually, Penny Patterson is her name, and this is completely out of left field, but she is the woman who taught Coco the gorilla how to speak sign language and how to communicate. She's the first person, from my knowledge, to forge a real, actual, like, connection with an animal and like communication with an animal. And Coco just passed away last year. It was very sad. I mean, she was 47, I believe. So, that's old for a gorilla, very old for a gorilla. So it was obviously sad, but we were expecting it. But Penny is just this phenomenal woman who is just like, who achieved something that nobody else has really had achieved at that time and as successfully since. And Coco was just this amazing creature that was smart and like, had empathy and, like she cried when Robin Williams died. Like just stuff like that where you go like, oh shit, like, we often think of animals as just wild animals, but what Penny did was really open up a world of like, no, they're living creatures with feelings and emotions and thoughts and like wants and desires. It's not all instinctual, like there is some for lack of a better word, humanity in that. And I just find her fascinating. And the work that they're doing with the Guerrilla Research Facility there is just like, they're doing amazing things. So yeah, Penny is probably right up at the top of my list of people I'd love to sit down with and just be like, tell me how this happened. Like, how did you do this? It's amazing. So yeah, that'd be it. Yeah, I know an odd answer, not probably the last answer you were expecting, I'm sure, but
it kind of fits with your theme of the study of humans and trying to connect with others. Mm-hmm. What I'm sensing is when you're on stage communicating as a comedian, or whether it's on the podcast, or even if you were able to talk to Penny, it feels like you're trying to reach out to people and affect them emotionally.
For sure.
Would that be accurate to say?
Absolutely, yeah. Some of the episodes we get the best feedback from for the story of you are ones where people talk about like hard topics. You know, like we've had people come on and talk very candidly about rape and sexual assault, mental health, suicidal thoughts, like all that kind of really heavy shit that people don't really want to talk about. But what I found is that when people talk about those things, somebody hears it and they go, oh, I thought I was the only one. And then I hear, oh, this person talking about it, and now I don't feel alone, and I feel like, oh, there is some hope for me, and that this person was where I was 5 years ago, and now look at how good they're doing, and I can get there. You know, like I love all the episodes that we do, but those are the ones that tend to like have the most lasting impact because they do affect people in very tangible, real world ways. We did a live podcast last 2 years ago now about rape and sexual assault. We had a panel discussion where I believe it was 4 like very brave, very strong women came on, and one man came on and talked about their experiences and what happened with them and just how they got help and how they learned to live with it, you know, as being a survivor. And the greatest the greatest accomplishment from that show is the next day I got a message from Lisa Miller at the Regina Sexual Assault Center saying that day they had several women come in and say like, hey, I was at the show last night and I think there's something I need to talk about. And they who knows if they would have done that otherwise. I mean, I'm sure they would have got there eventually, but just knowing that like there is a tangible result between us sharing our stories and people making positive changes in their lives is like that's the greatest accomplishment we can have. So yeah.
When you're tackling those kinds of tough subjects, do you find it exhausts you or energizes you? Sorry.
It can be emotionally taxing, but not in a bad way. Like I laugh with guests, I cry with guests. There can be a lot of emotion shared across the table, and I never leave a session like that going like, oh, I'm glad that's done type of thing. I know that's not what you asked, but it always feels good to do an episode, and whether it's an emotionally difficult episode or it's just me and a friend bullshitting, right? Like either way, I come out of there feeling great. So I think I feel good no matter what we're doing. So yeah, I'm easy to please in that sense.
I remember when I was doing more intense like crime reporting, health reporting, stuff like that, speaking with the people who were directly involved, I would be like dripping in sweat and just like a bag of like loose meat punched up and like
no doubt. Yeah.
And it would take me like 20 minutes just to like take a breath and recover, but you don't get that.
Well, if I had to guess, I would say in your case, it was probably because you were getting them at their freshest, when emotions are the highest and when like they haven't really had time to process what was happening, the murder of their brother or whatever it was, right? At least with the guests that I have, there's a bit of distance between the events we talk about and then present day. Not always, sometimes it can be a bit of a raw nerve, but for the most part, and like obviously with any kind of thing like that, there are always scars, right? There's always something that is left over, but the wound isn't as fresh as I'd imagine when you were talking to people. So I could see that being a hell of a lot harder than than sitting down 4, 5, 6 years after the fact and talking about it. So yeah, for sure, that would be exhausting. Good God.
Let's change directions a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things I found was when you said you were doing massage therapy, I was looking at what the role of the bartender might be, and it's kind of not too different. Somebody bellies up to the bar, you talk about your day,
Yeah.
what's going on. And for you, I mean, you're throwing an elbow into a piece of muscle, maybe like, oh, I just got in a car accident. You're fixing my achy muscle.
For sure.
Do you see those connections? Did you think
yeah.
about those when you're coming in today?
Yeah, for sure, to a certain extent. Like, it's so funny. We always joked in school that like half of our title is therapist, right? I'm a massage therapist, and we always joked about that, not really understanding what that meant. And then you get into the field and you go like, no, like half our title is therapist. Like I find that like people have, and I don't know. Again, this is just a theory, but like being face down on the table, you can't see me. I'm just a voice that's floating around you. You can't even really like see what I'm doing with your muscles, right? Like you don't know if it's my left hand, my right hand, like what's going on. And I find that gives people a sense of anonymity and allows them to open up in ways they wouldn't if we were just sitting talking to each other, you know. And when you're getting a massage, you're in a vulnerable state, obviously, right? You're in some cases you're completely naked under a sheet with someone you maybe just met, right? And they're touching your body, and you know, and it's just like, to break it down, it is kind of a strange thing, right? And so, and I think that vulnerability and that just kind of putting people in a vulnerable state allows them to open up in ways that they wouldn't before. And it's funny, in school, one of the teachers was telling us about when he first started doing massage, he actually worked with a counselor, I believe. A counselor, psychologist, something like that. And they would do a massage, like he would massage the client, and then at a certain point they would kind of like have a bit of a release in terms of like an emotional response or something like that. And at that point, the massage would stop and he would send them into the next room where they would go get counseling. And all those barriers had already broken down, and they could then just talk freely about what brought them in that day. And it's like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I could see this being a really useful tool for therapy and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Have you thought about maybe that would be something you do in the future?
It's all I think about, actually. Yeah, I really do feel like I would love to be a therapist or a counselor would be an awesome role. You know, like counselors have helped a lot of people in my life, and I just see the good work that they do. And it's kind of tough when you're talking to someone and you go like, I want to help you, but like I'm not qualified to help you, right? And I can't. And I think that would be something that I'd definitely be interested in transitioning to at a certain point. My body's being destroyed by massage, so I can't do it forever. I need to find something else, and that might be it, yeah.
If people want to find out more information about Story of You, or even about your work as a massage therapist, where should they go?
Okay, so for Story of You, head on over to www.storyofyou, again, that's the letter U, podcast.com, storyofyoupodcast.com, and there you'll find all of our past episodes. You'll find my TEDx talk I did a few years ago about our stories and why our stories are important, and best of all, you'll find the contact button. We're always looking for guests for the show, so if you want to hit us up, go to storyofyoupodcast.com, click on the contact button, send us a quick email about yourself, and you'll be on the show. We don't say no to anybody. We think everyone has a valid point of view and a valid story to tell. So if you want to share it, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. So as far as massage is concerned, don't come find me. I don't care. I'm not going to promote that. I don't want to. Whatever. Just do my podcast. I don't care about massage. It's fine. Google my name. You'll find me. Whatever. I also want to shout out the Sask Podcast Network. Everything Dale's doing over there is great, and I love the network and all the great shows on there. And I do have another podcast that you should check out. It is not on the network, and that's probably a good thing. It's called the Official Goatsy Podcast.
Oh God!
And it is me and my good friend Garrett and my other good friend Dave, and we just sit around and bullshit with each other and say things that'll probably get us fired from our jobs one day, and just generally act like complete buffoons and have a great time. So yeah, check out the Official Goatsy Podcast. Head to teespring.com/stores/Official Goatsy Podcast and buy our merchandise. Sign up for our Patreon. Give us money, essentially, is what I want. So yeah, those are the things I'd like to promote today. So
for anyone who knows about Goatsy, you have not horrified me, but I'm just inching away from you a little bit.
Inching towards your computer to look up the Official Goatsy Podcast. I understand. Yeah.
Super gross.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we wanted to come up with the most off-putting name we could, and it came down to Gimp Mask and the Official Goatsy Podcast, and I think we picked the right one. So yeah.
Jeez, as long as none of you have the tattoo.
Oh, not yet. I'm sure we'll get there someday, but yeah.
Shawn, thank you for coming on the show today.
Matt, thank you. This was great.
Rebels, thanks for listening. I'm going to include links in the show notes so you can find more about Shawn and the Story of You podcast. I was going to say I'm proud to let you know about us being part of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network, but I feel like we've covered it. So, if you want to find the latest news about Rebellion Brewing or see what latest beers we have on tap, if you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, just check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped. Untapped is like Facebook for beer. It's a free app you can install on your phone. You can check in our beers and send us quick little messages or give us 1 or 5 stars depending if you like the beer or not. Really easy to use, and I just like it. It's like Pokemon for beer. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.